Welcome to Yoga Church, Mother's Day edition, where we rest in non-duality teachings. In non-duality is Jhana yoga, yoga of knowledge. It's also called the direct path because it points directly at the misunderstandings. It points directly at what is real and what is unreal. I want to talk about how it's a subtractive process. We're not adding. The teachings come in and they're just pointers, and we see what's not real. And as the what is not real falls away, then what is real just becomes more present. It's always here. But in this uncovering, what is real becomes more present naturally. So you don't have to imagine what's real. We uncover what is not real. I'm going to look at notes a little bit more today. Also, just the reminder that it's a non-conceptual understanding, which is strange, but it's the same thing that I'm talking about here. That although we're sharing words and concepts, they're just pointers in when the understanding does its work, it's because it's been realized at the non-conceptual level. So we're directly understanding. We're directly experiencing. We're not putting on new beliefs. We're just checking in the moment, right now, what's real. Everything regarded to the past, imaginary future, not real. What's true now? So, as usual, we'll talk some about the misunderstandings that veil, that cover up what is true. And we'll investigate the misunderstandings and we'll investigate what is true. I'm really feeling today the importance of talking about what is real. So this is going to keep happening. What's real, and investigating the word real more deeply here. So looking into what's real more than what we think of as what's real in the West. So we'll look into that some. We'll talk more about this fundamental all is God. And we don't have to use the word God. You can use the word source or creator or divine energy, this impersonal supportive force behind everything. That's the non-dual understanding. That's last time I said that's the ultimate non-dual understanding, and I'm feeling ultimate's a strong word because there's so much. But a very fundamental non-dual understanding is that is behind everything. Not non-dual, Advaita Vedanta, not to that is behind everything. Also going to take a moment to talk about non-doership and predetermination, and that's all part of the uncovering that happens. So we'll also talk some about that. When I'm talking about the misunderstandings, again, this is what's veiling what's real and what we're going to be investigating. And that first really big misunderstanding is that I am a body-mind. And this is super understandable that that's how we take ourselves to be. And then what we do here is we see, again, what's behind that. And it's not something that only a special few people can see. This is what anybody can see at any time, at any moment. And that's even going to be part of the parting comments for today, to take this out with us and keep checking this identity. Am I the body mind, or am I that witnessing presence behind it? I just said behind it, which kind of attaches the witnessing presence to the body, but we don't want to do that attachment. This is another misunderstanding. And we could maybe say flows through it. So the witnessing presence flowing through the body mind. So misunderstanding that I am this body mind, and the correct understanding being that we're going to investigate more and more every day and as we go off into life, but here in yoga church as well, this nature of the witnessing presence. I wanted to talk about a couple of the misunderstandings we'll talk about is doership and destiny, and where happiness and suffering come from, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. I'm going to focus a little bit more on what's real first. And there's this very special prayer, an ancient prayer, Sanskrit prayer, thousands of years old. The prayer is Asatuma Sadgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We can just sit in that prayer forever and ever. It's so amazing. I want to translate a little bit for you. So, Asatoma Sadgamaya, lead me, the seeker, lead me from the unreal to the real. They also, you'll see this translated as from untruth to truth. So life is lived in the untruth and the unreal. And we can just be speaking to the absolute, lead this life, the understanding that's happening here, from the unreal to the real. We'll talk more about real. On the next line, Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Oh no. It's the third line. Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya. Oh geez, I have to check. Yes. Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya. That is, lead me from darkness to light. From darkness to light. I feel like the darkness is that veiling that has happened. We can't see the light that is always here. So from darkness to light, it's letting the veils part, letting the illusions dissolve away, and then the light is here again, naturally here. And then the last part, or second to last part, Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya, from death to immortality. Lead me from death to immortality. That's the identity. We identify with what arises and falls, with an event, the relationship, the body-mind, the thought. All objects arising and falling, and we identify with those. We attach our identity with this. As we keep looking at this, we'll see this attachment happens, identity with these, all of this stuff. It's all dying. And then what we're pointing to is the undying, this witnessing presence that we'll keep investigating and spending time with. That we might not have been told was important before, but now we're hearing that it's important. We're hearing to check on it, to see it more and more, and again, more and more, it'll just come into a life. First we check on it over time, and then eventually it's just here more, and life is met with that witnessing presence, the unborn and the undying. Lead me from death to immortality. And then the last, fourth line, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The end of a lot of prayers, the Om can be at the start of this prayer as well, at the end as well. It's kind of encapsulating all of creation. Om. And then the Shanti, 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 that peace, that deep inner peace that's naturally here, that is uncovered, that the sage lives its life from, that deep inner peace that all of life is meeting, a deep inner peace that's naturally here, that we're coming to know more and more fully as, say, it's going to so much, the misunderstandings, who I take myself to be, but also these beliefs in doership, where I find, where I think happiness comes from and where I think suffering comes from. And when that is investigated and understood, then peace, 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 deep inner peace, deep contentment is naturally here. So, contemplating reality this week, or the sharing today, there's this thing in duality or non-duality in the teaching where we talk about the one reality. There can't be multiple realities. There's one reality. There's one reality. And there was an understanding that came today, not that it hasn't been there before, but just struck very strongly of duality, all of the multiplicity, all objects, they all come with thought. So before there is thought, there's just the unfolding of creation as one great unfolding. Before there is thought, we just sit in the moment without thought. There's just the wholeness. And then maybe a sound is heard, and then we start connecting it to something, and the wholeness gets broken down into the pieces. But before that happened, before that sound was heard, there's just the wholeness. If I'm looking around the room, really, before any labeling happens, there's just the wholeness. Then when the labeling happens, the multiplicity starts coming to life. Remember, as we rest more in that witnessing presence, we become more aware of the nature of thought, these thoughts rising and falling, and see the labeling happening, and see before the labeling is happening the wholeness that is there. And then as the labeling happens, that wholeness kind of collapsing into all of these objects that are appearing. And of course, every individual life will do its own labeling. Every individual life has its own genetics and conditioning that it's coming into life with. And when it experiences a room, when it experiences a sound, feeling warm or cold, a thought, whatever is experienced, every body mind starts labeling differently, right? This isn't you just haven't maybe thought about it, but every body mind will label differently. And then there are all this infinite realities as appears, every body mind having its own reality that it's experiencing. But fundamentally, there aren't billions of realities, there's one reality. And that's what we're talking about. So pointing to that one reality, that's what non-duality is looking at. That which is here before all of that labeling starts happening. And it's not that we need to live a life free of labeling. That wouldn't be much of a life. If we can say, hey, how you doing? Interact with people in life, whatever's happening, that's okay. But the more that this wholeness is here, then as we interact with that, just like that witnessing presence is here, that wholeness is behind all of the interactions that happens. And labeling can happen, but we're not so drawn into it. Mhm. So just looking into the real, and we'll keep looking into the real more. I wanted to come back to this all is God. And I think the last time I shared, I don't know if I spoke about the way that it's understood, uh, what was first understood really deeply here, really simply here, and it's the experience of an individual body. So I know I talk about this regularly, but just because last time I didn't. Um, and I think it's important for the all is God, and I'm feeling that it's important to share that earlier in the discussion. So um, these bodies are amazing, and we can call it a biological organism, but don't allow that. It's a magical biological organism. We don't want to allow just calling it a biological organism an instrument of the expression of the absolute. Just that word instrument, we don't want to downplay the magnificence of it. Every cell that makes up the whole, there's so much happening inside of every cell. It's that nucleus of the cell, and then things coming in and out, and things being built, and things being taken apart, and we don't have to think about any of it. It's all just happening on its own. And it's true that science has some understanding of how this is happening, but they have no understanding of how it's all happening, for sure. So it's happening on the cellular level. We don't have to think about it, like, oh, that cell, there's something that needs to, of course, that's not happening. These billions of cells that are all working together, doing their thing. They're working together in different systems, respiratory system and circulatory system and digestive system and nervous system, all working together to allow this to express itself. And the feeling here one of those first, like it's so obvious that God's behind everything, is that I can feel it inside this body that it's behind everything. And then at some point, especially when the feeling of doership was dropping away more and more, it felt like this body was one of those parts of a cell. It's all being directed and doing its thing. It's all part of this whole. And then even this planet and this solar system and this galaxy and this universe, it's all working together magically, just like an individual cell. That's the feeling that it's all, there's some laws of physics behind things for sure. And there's also for sure the absolute behind everything. And it just becomes more and more apparent. It becomes more and more apparent. And as usual, I want to share more of masters sharing this understanding. And I have some good quotes here to share today. So this feeling of all is God. And again, it's not a personal God in the clouds, Zeus sort of creature or whatever other sort of creature, but a impersonal intelligence, supportive force behind all of creation. That's what's felt when we say all is God here. You cannot be separate from it for a moment. It's the absolute substance of everything. So this being part of that non-dual understanding that's arising more and more as the misunderstandings fall away. And then taking this back again to that first misunderstanding, I am the body mind, I am a person. And then this part of the location of awareness on top of that. And we're using that pointer, awareness, sometimes referred to as the golden thread, because easily accessible by everybody, overlooked pretty much by everybody. But we're told by the masters throughout time and the sacred texts throughout time that there's something there. So we start looking at that awareness. And, I like to say there's awareness of the sounds. So there's awareness of the sounds that are being heard. And when the eyes are open, there's awareness of what is seen. There's awareness of what is felt. And there's awareness of thoughts appearing and disappearing. And there's awareness in the dream state. I think it's important to see that there's not a visual awareness and a sound awareness. There's one awareness. There's one awareness. So all of this is landing in that one awareness. We say everything appears in awareness. The sounds and the sights and the thoughts and the dreams. All this multiplicity appearing in that awareness, that one awareness. We see that one awareness is untouched by life. So the body can be hot or cold, but is the awareness hot or cold, or it's just aware that the body is hot or cold? The mind can be anxious, but is the awareness anxious, or is it aware of anxiousness? Body can be tired, and check, is the awareness tired? So we check day after day, moment after moment, the nature of awareness. Check that awareness is there. We kind of know it's always been there, but keep checking. Awareness is there. It's not an object of perception. We can't see it, but we know that we are aware. Is there a location of the awareness? It's just, does it land somewhere? We want to put it in a body. We want to think that this body is aware and that body is aware. What we're saying here is that there's awareness, and the body minds are just sense organs where thoughts happen and memories are happening. There's just one awareness. We can't put an edge on it. I had another understanding that happened to me this week that I want to reflect on a little bit in a moment, but I'm feeling about the locationness of it right now. So when we think that a body is aware, we think that maybe so the parents came together and a sperm met an egg, and did awareness happen in that moment? Or was there just awareness? Or did awareness that this body is forming into a fetus and then an infant? And we know, of course, at the infant level that awareness is there, and maybe throughout this whole thing. Was there a moment when it doesn't work to put a moment on it? So it's outside of time and it's outside of space. It's not touched by life. It's free of all that. And we can all access this at any moment. Ramana, he said, turn your attention away from the objects to the one who is aware. The always present, unchanging awareness. So turn your attention away from the objects. And sometimes attention needs to be on objects, right? If we're driving down the road, if we're talking to somebody, if whatever else is happening. But time is taken, it's seen as a value to be aware of the one that is aware. And then as more of this happens, that one that is aware just comes more and more to the forefront of life. And as awareness of objects is happening, that one that is aware, the awareness of the one that is aware, is more and more there in life. I wanted to take a moment again and talk about that edges. So the investigation of reality was happening again this week, and wanting to share and wanting to what to share and how to share. And a question came up, and so because this is so different, this non-dual understanding is different from how we're used to seeing the world. coming with questions makes sense. So it's fine to have questions, as I say. And then also there's an amazing power in just having the question within and letting the universe answer the question within. There's a term, Satguru. Satguru means Sat meaning true, and Guru meaning the one that leads from darkness to light. So Satguru, the true one leading from darkness to light. So sometimes a great master, like Ramana Maharshi, they might call the Satguru, the great master, the one that can lead seekers from darkness to light. But then there's also this the Absolute is the true Sadguru. The Absolute that's behind everything is the true Sadguru. That is what leads a life to Ramana. That's what leads a life to Nandamaya Ma, who we'll talk about in a second. The true Guru is the Absolute. The true Guru shines through all of us. It's never been separate from you. So a question coming, a question being asked, a question sitting inside, and then these amazing answers can just come from within. So this week, the question came, if there's a separate from me, that means I'm a separate individual. This common belief. If there's a separate from me, I must have edges. I must be in space-time. And if we're imagining ourselves to be body minds, then we do have edges. We are in space-time. But the more we start to see that the center of all of the unfolding of every life is this witnessing presence. The only thing that has not changed throughout a life is this witnessing presence. What is received by the receiver of every experience is that witnessing presence. The experiences are changing, sense perceptions are changing, but this witnessing. And then how can that not be more who I am than this body mind? So then feeling myself more to be that. And then that doesn't have edges, that is not in space-time. And asking the question, so if there is a separate from me, I must have edges, I must be in space-time, but then asking the question, where is the edge of awareness? When Ramana had his question he loved to ask more than any other, loved individuals to ask this self-inquiry. It's not that a question is going to have an answer to it. A question lots of times will dissolve the misunderstanding. And there's not an answer, it's just a dissolver of the misunderstanding. Where's the edge of awareness? So I can't find one. Where does it start? Where does it end? When does it start? When does it end? Can't find one. And then going back to the start, if there is a separate me, I must have edges. Then there can't be a separate me. Clearly, there's a body-mind here. I just can't identify with it so strongly. When an identification needs to happen with that, it's a role that's being played. It's okay. But who I am ultimately is not that. So, I want to take a moment for Mother's Day, Nandamaima, Shivananda Saraswati, so he was the founder of the Divine Life Society, great teacher and sage of the 20th century. So spreading the words, I think he was a doctor originally. Spreading the words through this Divine Life Society. The Shivananda Yoga Farm in Grass Valley is around him. He called Nandamaima the most perfect flower the Indian soil has produced. Saying a lot. All these great sages and saints throughout time. And I'll continue to share stories of the sages and saints. I think we don't have a lot necessarily in our Western culture. India has definitely been fertile ground for that, and to say that of Anandamayama is amazing. Paramahamsa Yogananda, so he is the author, or he wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, definitely a master, and started the Self-Realization Fellowship, organizations around the United States and the world, and Ananda Village up in Nevada City is around him. There's a beautiful bookstore. It's called like Inner Light or something like that in Nevada City. Bookstore, spirit or yoga center, sort of a place all around Paramahansa Yogananda. So he met Anandamayama. There's this beautiful picture of Anandamayama meeting Paramahamsa Yogananda, and this is her husband, Bolanath. And she's hanging on Yogananda's shoulders here. There's multiple pictures of her sitting with him hanging on her shoulders like that, or hanging on his shoulders like that. Autobiography of a Yogi, all this. So he came to her and he said, tell me about your life. Tell me about yourself. She was this great rare force, and it was recognized pretty early on, and she was given this name, Anandamayi, which is the bliss-permeated mother. And I look forward to sharing more of her story. But in the pointing to what is real, and for Mother's Day, so tell me about your life. And she said, Father, there is little to tell. My consciousness has never associated itself with this temporary body. Before I came on this earth, Father, I was the same. As a little girl, I was the same. I grew into womanhood, but still, I was the same. When the family in which I have been born, made arrangements to have this body married, I was the same. And Father, in front of you now, I am the same. Ever afterward, though the dance of creation changes around me, in the hall of eternity, I shall be the same. He said, tell me about your life. This is her response. This is that real that we're talking about. That unchanging that we're talking about. And I just want to point out one thing, real versus unreal. So this body, real, right? Right now, but it rises and falls. This body's as real as a thought. A thought is real, it appears and it falls away. A dream is real, it appears and it falls away. In India, when they talk about what is real, it's not that they say that the body isn't real right now. They're pointing to what is always here. Is always here. What is real. So lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from this world that I'm misidentified with to what is eternal. The real is what is always unchanging, ever present. So I want to go again to those couple of misconceptions around doership, predetermination, sources of happiness and suffering. And the way that we understand a doership, or a way that we can look at it and understand doership, is to understand that all actions of an individual body mind come from its genetics and its up-to-date conditioning. There's a feeling that there's like this doing entity inside. It's deciding this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And there is an apparent doer, but there's this deep shift in understanding and peace that can come in understanding that if there's just the apparent doer, really all actions are coming from this, and really, again, that absolute that's behind everything. So genetics, you're not in control of. The conditioning we've talked about, where the life you were born into, the family, the neighborhood, the culture, not in control, the school that you went to, the friends that you ended up choosing, everything that happens was just an unfolding from what was there previously, from the genetics and the conditioning. And again, that there's this divinity behind all that. It's not just random. There's a divinity behind all that. So there's that genetics and conditioning, but it's all the absolute behind all that. And then actions aren't coming from individuals deciding they need to act a certain way. Life is just flowing through these individuals. So life is flowing through these individuals. Actions aren't coming up separately from individual doers. We're all instruments of creation, playing our part. The flute is necessary for the song, but it's just an instrument created for that action. And come back to that wonderful metaphor of the kitchen appliances brought to us by Ramesh Balsekar, as far as I know. And so we have the different kitchen appliances that are created for their own purpose. There's the blender, and there's the toaster, and there's the refrigerator. This body mind was created to do something uniquely. This body mind, this body mind, this body mind, this body mind, created to do something uniquely. And then playing its part in creation. Just like the appliances in the kitchen. And again, there's that one electricity running through them all, that one, and of course the metaphor falls apart at some point, but that one um, um, force behind them all, running them all, allowing them to do what they need to do. Nothing could happen without that one force. Nothing can happen. No life will happen. Every cell in this body, the party's over without that presence. But no worry, that presence is always and ever. Similarly, the appliances always have that force that allow them to act and do that thing. In this case, the electricity, and in life, that divine presence behind everything. Then we have this suffering that happens because we believe that the individual is in control of their actions. Myself and the other. And we had that example last time of the working environment. So we're at that meeting and there's the one person abusing another person, and the way the individuals would react to that, all coming from their nature, the abuser coming from his nature, the one that is being abused, however that's happening, coming from their nature, everything naturally unfolding. And if that is met from this space of everything coming from one's nature, all the individual actions or non-actions coming from one's nature, then so much psychological load is dropped away. I had a list here, some of that psychological load: anxiety, worry, guilt, shame, blame, crime, arrogance. Can guilt exist if this is just coming from one's nature? So just check, can guilt exist? And when we feel guilty in life, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Then we check, oh, it was my nature. Not that things can change, right? So we say up-to-date conditioning. So we can say, next time I want to try to do it better. That's okay. But I'm not going to take on this psychological load of guilt. And how much will a life change? How much will a mind calm down and be quiet if there's not all this I should have, I shouldn't have, and they should have, and they shouldn't have? So that blaming myself, blaming the other, just can't live if it's coming from their nature. It's if it's coming from your nature. I did it wrong, I should have done it differently. They did it wrong, they should have done it differently. All of that can't live anymore. And we could say, again, like the abuser, hey, maybe give some understanding and maybe the conditioning can change. Maybe it won't. I'm not attached to it changing or not. I realize it could possibly change, and this is why actions happen, because things can possibly change. I'm not going to hold my happiness and my suffering to that event. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So the way we like to think of this is they should have done it differently. If I'm saying they should have done it differently, I'm thinking that they should be a toaster instead of a blender. That they were created that way to be a blender. They're not the toaster. It's the way they were created. I'm going to be more gentle. I'm not going to hold this so tightly. A lot of what happens here is a loosening, and then what's naturally present just comes forward. Even a loosening has a power. If we can, the more that we can take what's happening as just being a natural unfolding, freer we will be. And then this other part of the mind taking ownership of the actions after the fact, that they did this. So the action happened, and then we say they did this, or this body does something, and I say I did that. I'm so wonderful, or I'm so awful. But it just happened. So understanding it more of it being it just happened. Ramana, he said, he who thinks he is the doer is also the sufferer. He who thinks he is the doer is also the sufferer. And I wanted to share this other teacher. So Joel Goldsmith, he was a Christian Scientist healer. So healing, his father, I think, was healed by Christian Scientists, and then he was healed, and then he started getting into what they taught. And then healing, he started recognizing very early on that healing was happening through him. And a lot of people ended up coming to him, and he ended up writing a lot of books. And I think the main book in his organization was called The Invisible Way, and he's very non-dualistic, even though not saying that he's non-dualistic, but very non-dualistic, like happens so often. And one of the things that he would often say is give up the belief in two powers. That means I'm the doer. Maybe there's the belief in the absolute being the doer, then I'm also the doer, and there's a power in, or I don't want to overuse that word power here, but there's a transformation that happens in giving up the belief in two powers. Everything is happening through that one, because of that one, and there's no doer here. Giving up the belief in two powers means giving up the belief in individual doership. Both them being the individual doer and me being the individual doer. That's the second power, individual doership versus the one power. He also, I saw this other beautiful quote of his. He says, the material world is a mental construct. The material world is a mental construct. He called it a mesmerism. Mesmerism. We talk about how we're hypnotized by form. We get all involved in it, by what we see, by what we hear. This is what Raman is talking about, that we're all caught up in the objects and not what is aware of the objects. We've been hypnotized. He used that word mesmerism, and seeing the world coming from that, so beautiful. And then when this belief in doership falls away more and more, again, there's this this lack of psychological load of blame and hatred and guilt and shame, arrogance and pride. All of that falls away. Another amazing thing that falls away, I mean, it just has to, it can't live, that I'm in control of my destiny. I'm not the doer. If actions are coming from this, how am I in control of my destiny? Now, this is heavy sometimes. So in the West, we're in control of our destiny, and this is heavy partially because we believe happiness comes from outcomes. Again, that the happiness is going to come from that shanti, 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 that deep peace, that deep contentment, that acceptance of the flow of life, that non-battling with the flow of life. We see that happiness is naturally here. It's not something that we create that comes to us from our outcomes. And similarly, suffering is not something that is resulting from our outcomes. We talk about our preferences and our aversions. Our aversions are we're pretending what causes us suffering, and our happiness we're pretending is coming from meeting our preferences. Maximizing our preferences and minimizing our aversions is, maximizing happiness and minimizing suffering. But what we're saying here is that happiness is natural. But Ramana is saying happiness, it's not wrong to seek it. It's wrong to seek it outside yourself. It's naturally here. And he also said many times that the peace is naturally here. So we're doing the uncovering, and we see that that peace is naturally here. And so, like the Buddha said, he said that suffering really is dukkha, which is the resistance to the flow of life. But what happens when we don't resist that flow of life? When we see the flow of life being divine, it might be what I wanted, it might be what I didn't want. If something comes to me that I didn't want, that means it's probably not pleasant. Feeling here is still that it comes from the absolute. Pay attention. It almost feels like a sandpaper clearing the house. Eckhart Tolle said, resistance to the now is the root cause of all human suffering. Resistance to the now, he loved to speak of the now, is the root cause of all human suffering. And then speaking of, predetermination, Ramana says, divine will prevails at all times and under all circumstances. Individuals cannot act of their own accord. Recognize the force of the divine will and keep quiet. Each and every one is looked after by God. So, as we wrap up here today, if we can just go into life checking with the nature of awareness, that golden thread that lead us to our true nature. Is there one awareness without location, untouched by life? As often as you can, just, oh, there's awareness there, receiving that. And then secondly, if we can look at this doership, if we feel blame, if we feel guilt, if we feel shame, did it come from one's nature, from the other's nature? And then recognizing how the peace can just deepen in a life as this understanding happens in the seeing of the world. For being here.